Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Crystal and I'm a pastry chef entrepreneur based in Jakarta, Indonesia, and I'm running my bakery brand. So my channel is about sharing my journey as a pastry chef and building a business and sharing tips on productivity, entrepreneurship, and also occasional travel vlogs and productivity tips. It's an ongoing process, but I hope that my journey can help you guys have some insight on things that can help you save time, provide some new perspective, and save time and the stress of making mistakes, and in general, have more time to do things that are fun. Today, I'll be sharing 5 things that I wish I knew before pursuing a career in pastry. So let's dive straight in. So the first thing is starting work really early. So this was one of the things that I really overlooked until I started my first job in a small cake shop in a small town in southern France called Monistrol. And it was opened by this Meilleur Ouvrier de France, which is like a title that some people get for being really skilled in certain arts like ice sculpting, ice cream making, chocolate making, and also pastries. And we started work at 5 a.m. because like we had 2 shops and another one is in a neighboring town, and the chef would take one of the employees to deliver it by car every single morning. So we had to prepare the cakes and pastries before they went out for delivery. But one thing I realized was that on the way to work, I realized that a lot of bakeries were already open, especially those that sold bread, and they must have started work earlier than us, probably 2 or 3 a.m. So that was really surprising for me. And it was also during the winter, so it was extremely hard to get up since the only thing I wanted to do was just to stay under my warm blanket and stay warm. And not only that, during Christmas we had to get up even earlier because it was really crowded. We had to prepare for the orders. We even started work at 3 or 2 a.m. on that day after getting back like in the late afternoon. So we basically just like had more time in the kitchen more than at home. The second thing that I wish I knew before starting pastry is that it's physically demanding. I guess it's nothing new, and it might be obvious to most of us that we gain some muscles just being in the pastry industry. So I noticed that my arms were getting much more firm than it used to be flabby. And that was after like a few months in after pastry school, because like I was doing a lot of washing, I was carrying a lot of trays. But I really felt it when I started my first job also, where there was a small team. There was only 5 of us. There were 3 girls and 2 guys. And the 2 guys, since they have been there for a longer period of time, they were in another shift which started earlier and also ended earlier. And there would be a break in between where the girls would be in charge of making certain types of doughs before they came back, and also the suppliers would come during this break really often, and so we had no choice to actually like carry lots of flour, 30 kilograms of a gigantic box of butter, and also sacks of flour down into the storage room. And since I'm a pretty competitive person, I didn't ask for help, and in the end ended up straining my back. So another tip is that if you were to carry really heavy stuff, just make sure that you do it in the correct posture, because you might end up with long-term pain just like me, and it's not fun. Thirdly, the job can be pretty repetitive, especially since like after pastry school, in your first job, you start from a low rank and you tend to be entrusted jobs such as decorating cakes, packing, and a lot of other trivial tasks that wouldn't be so severe if you made a mistake. In comparison, like for example, you've been in the job for a longer period of time and have more experience, you would be entrusted with jobs like weighing out recipes and also mixing doughs. And in these cases, if you made a mistake, it would mess up like a huge batch of dough, so that would be pretty severe. Just like I had an experience in my first job as well, where like a senior coworker of mine, she messed up and she, I think, mistook salt for gelatin, or something that sounds like a powdered ingredient for gelatin, when she was about to make glazing, and that just messed up like a huge pot of glazing, and that was really quite traumatic for her. So I guess, yeah, if you're in the lower ranks, they tend to entrust you with like lower stuff that wouldn't be so serious if you messed up, and that can be quite repetitive. And my experience with this was I realized like quickly after a few months in the job that I guess, since like the reason why I pursued pastry in the beginning is because I liked the pastry creation aspect, and if I realized after doing the same things over and over again, day in, day out, I realized that it wasn't really suitable for me to have a repetitive job. But I guess my mindset was a bit different, and if you're like me and your end goal is also to create a cake shop in the end, I guess your mindset would differ in the sense that observing and being exposed in a cake shop is already pretty good of an experience, since you can be exposed to how they operate the business, how they decide how many cakes to put out every day, how to make the system of pastry creation more efficient, and other things that maybe you wouldn't think of if you weren't exposed in that kind of an environment. So for the fourth point is holidays on odd days. Since we're in the hospitality industry, we tend to have to work the hardest when business is the best, when everyone is on vacation. And I've missed out on a few family vacations because of this, because everyone's trying to find a time where everybody's on holiday so that they can plan a vacation to go somewhere during that time. And another unique thing that happens is when you actually have your own cake business and you're not only involved in the day-to-day pastry making, but also in the planning of marketing campaigns and product launches for certain festive seasons. I really feel like life is on a fast forward ever since I'm running my business, because like for example, like last year, it was only New Year and we were already planning for Valentine's Day and even Easter's, so we don't really get to enjoy the moment, and I'm still trying to find a way to be more in the moment despite this happening, because like I don't know, it's just not very enjoyable when it's only New Year's and you're already thinking about Christmas. So for the fifth and final thing is that creativity is something that you learn through experience. So one of the things that I really struggled with while I was starting out in pastry is that I felt like I didn't really have the sense. I didn't really have the creative sense to decorate cakes. For example, I would really dread those kinds of projects where you made like an almond tart or like a product together with everyone in the class, and they would be like, oh, these are some fruits and you can just like decorate them freestyle however you want, just as long as it looks nice and covered with transparent glaze. And these kind of projects really made me feel really demoralized, because everybody's final products would be much nicer than mine, and I would feel like, oh, it lacks dimension, it's too regularly decorated. So in the end, I ended up buying lots of books on decorating techniques and tips on how to create cakes that look more appealing. And that made me feel even worse, because in the end, I realized that I wasn't really able to replicate the techniques and the examples that I learned in the books in my own products. And through time, I realized that as I was exposing myself to more beautiful pastries, people with good techniques, and also learning more about pastry, I eventually developed a sense and was able to hone my skills and sharpen my skills through exposure and practice. And it's not really something that you really have to worry about. And if you're like me and you're sort of an overachiever where you're kind of competitive, I think it's better to give yourself some slack and trust the process. You would get better in it over time. I'm not saying that you don't have to like try to think of ways to get better, but don't give yourself too much pressure and just enjoy the process, and you'll eventually get there. Another thing that is related to this is that I'm also kind of disorganized and absent-minded in the past. So sometimes I would, like for example, I would be creating like a pastry dough that's kind of liquid, and my hand would accidentally touch something like a chocolate or like the dough, for example, and I would continue mixing it with my hands that are dirty, and the rubber spatula, I would use it to like mix other stuff on the table, and the mess would spread all over the table, thus affecting the results of my final product. I used to think that was because I have no talent for this, but if you think about it more carefully, it was because your shortcomings, like your bad habits of being not tidy and absent-minded, was kind of affecting your results. So I feel like through time, you have to be conscious about how you can improve, but since after practice and over time, it's something you can develop, and as long as you make small improvements over time that will compound, you would eventually get there. There's really no need for you to actually give too much pressure to yourself. So it's important to trust the process, since pastry is something that's enjoyable, and if you're like me, you're pursuing pastry because you enjoy that nice moment where you create a nice pastry and somebody is happy. So all the more, I think it really affects like the taste. It might sound kind of cheesy, but I'm sure that if you enjoy the process, you'll go further in the career, because it's not a very easy job. It's kind of tiring and everything. So don't give yourself too much pressure. So those are the 5 things that I wish I knew before pursuing pastry, and this is based on my personal experience and journey. I really would love to hear from fellow pastry chef friends and those of you who are pursuing pastry about your personal experience and what is one thing that you wished your younger self knew before pursuing pastry. Comment down below because I'm really interested to hearing your stories. And for those of you who are curious about my personal journey pursuing pastry, the pastry schools that I went to, the jobs that I worked at, and also tips in general, you might want to check out this video right here. And meanwhile, see you in the next one. Bye!